So I'm just going to navigate back to our homepage, and this is what you'll see. Now, when we're starting research here, obviously we want to use credible, reliable sources, right? Not just anything we find if we were to Google and the first results that we get from Google. It's important that we recognize where we're getting this information, who is producing this information, and to analyze this information for credibility and reliability. Again, part of your assignment is to select one of the neighborhoods from the city of New Orleans and write a research and documented report about that neighborhood. So when we're beginning our research, my suggestion is to take a look at this area on the homepage, left-hand side. I'm hovering over that research tab. You have several different areas there to begin your research. You can start using databases, if you have a particular journal title in mind, or if you just want to browse journals, you can. There's also books and media, and then there's this research guide right here. I skipped over research help because that is essentially emailing a librarian or using the chat feature. But the research guides are a little bit more specific in that those are related to classes or specific courses that are taught. These research guides also are specific to certain resources provided by the library. So let's click on research guides. And I'm going to type in newspapers. Right? Newspapers are a great source of information and maybe some challenges faced by residents within a particular neighborhood. You may see some repeated patterns, or it may give you an idea of a possible topic for a challenge faced by residents of that neighborhood. So I'm typing in newspapers, and obviously these are related to the history research guide, but if I just click on this first result for newspapers, it's going to take me to this page. Now, these are links to databases for historical news. And some of this may be helpful related to your topic or the neighborhood that you're researching. But I'm going to click on this link here on the left-hand side and click on current news. Now, a lot of these sites will give you access to newspapers around the United States as well as around the world. So Access World News, and you can kind of see within the description what this particular newspaper or database covers. You also have access to the New York Times, Wall Street Journal. But I'm scrolling down here to Louisiana News. And this is a Louisiana newsstand, provides a comprehensive selection of articles from the Baton Rouge Advocate and full copies of New Orleans Business, New Orleans City Business, New Orleans Magazine, and pre-1997 articles from the Times. So I'm not familiar with what the newspaper record is, maybe for New Orleans, or if there's a well-recognized state newspaper. I'm not familiar, but I do know that this database will kind of run the gamut in terms of different publications, different news publications. So as a student, it should recognize that you have access. So you can see here at the top, access provided by Xavier University of Louisiana. And we are searching 68 databases within this, but it's specifically related to those newspapers. So I am going to do a sample search here. We'll just do French Quarter. And I'm going to keep this broad. Do not type in your research question here, thesis statement, or full sentences. That is not how these databases operate. And it's not like Google where anything you type in, you're going to get results. You have to be specific when you're using library databases. It's kind of annoying, but at the same time, it's super helpful. That way you're not inundated with useless information. So my keywords here are pretty broad, right? French Quarter. I'm not including that with anything else. But the reason I'm keeping it broad is because I want to see what results I'll get just from the French Quarter. And then I'm going to show you how to narrow those down and get a little bit more specific. Okay, so as I mentioned, this is pretty broad. I just put in French Quarter, and I have almost 50,000 results. I have 49,489 results. What I like to tell students when we're using library databases, work smarter, not harder. Let the database do the work for you. So when you're using academic library databases, the first things you should select include peer-reviewed, right? This means that we want newspaper entries or journal articles that have been reviewed by other experts and deemed credible. That's going to take out a lot of the nonsense or non-academic articles that we can typically find just by doing a Google search. A lot of those .com sites are not peer-reviewed. When we're using library databases, we specifically want articles, whether they're newspaper articles, reports, or journal articles that have been peer-reviewed. We can also select the source type. So are we looking for scholarly journals or trade journals? I'm not going to go in depth about the difference between the two, but the scholarly journals are typically what you're looking for. That means that those are journals that are edited, have publishers or entries by other scholars, other academics, other professors, other professionals that have credentials based on the topic of that particular keywords that you're searching or research question that you are searching, right? We want scholarly journals that have been peer reviewed. So I'm going to select scholarly journals. And you can see I went from almost 50,000 results down to 1,110 results. I'm slowly chipping away and getting a little bit more focused. Now, the other thing is we can select publication date. So sometimes this will be important depending on the type of research that you're doing. The example I like to use is, let's say maybe you're doing something healthcare related. Usually when it comes to healthcare, the latest and greatest research, right? The latest stuff that comes out is going to be of the most important. That does not mean that historical research is not important, but we're looking for the latest advancements in maybe healthcare, right? And sometimes your professor will say you can't have any articles that are older than 10 years or 5 years, or look for articles within the past year. That's where this will come in handy. However, I'm not going to mess with that right now. I'm not going to look at anything. I have just over 1,000 results, still a lot, but not overwhelming. What I'm going to do is move to this next area, subject. And this is really where I'm letting the database do the work for me. So again, you need to pick a topic or a recent challenge related to the neighborhood, right? Look at this subject on here, and I opened that when I clicked on more, that opened this window here. What do I want to know about the French Quarter? Am I interested in hurricanes, maybe tourism, Mardi Gras, politics, whatever it might be? I can select that on here. The number that you see count right here will means that there are that many entries, that many articles related to this particular subject that I'm including with the French Quarter. My advice, if you're just starting off and thinking about a topic or challenge that you need to do for this neighborhood, do not select more than 3. We're really trying to focus and narrow this down, right? I am going to do tourism. I don't need to exclude everything else. I should have 89 results by just selecting tourism. I'm going to click apply. And there it is, 89 results. I'm looking at French Quarter in scholarly journals related to tourism. And these scholarly journals have been peer reviewed, right? So I have 89 results here. This is more than manageable. So let's take a look at some of these articles. And a quick helpful tip when you're doing this is if you just hover over a lot of these articles without having to click on them, you can just click on this quick look. It opens this side window and you have your abstract there. Now, unfortunately, one thing I just noticed with this first result is we have results here that are also in a foreign language. If we want to get rid of that, we can go down here on the left-hand side and only select English. It looks like there's 5 Spanish, maybe 1 Polish article and some other languages, but let's just click on English so that way we are not getting foreign language results. And again, quick look, opens the side window. Here's my abstract. Quick introduction to what this article is about. That way I can make a determination of whether or not I want to click on this and see the whole article. So let's see if a title sticks out to me. Let's say this one right here, the impacts of tourism stays on residents' self-reported health, a pan-European analysis on the role of age and urbanization level. That is a long title. It's a mouthful, but let's say that stood out to me. I'm going to take a quick look, read the abstract. It's talking about tourism, medical tourism. Unfortunately, it looks like it's not covering New Orleans on here or the French Quarter. I don't see anything related to that. So I'm going to skip this one. I'm not sure why it was listed, even though French Quarter's on there. I want to find one specifically related to the French Quarter. Okay, this is a scholarly journal. The Disneyfication of New Orleans, the French Quarter as a facade in a divided city. Let's take a quick look. All right, talking about New Orleans here. All right, let's say this is one we want to take a look at. So I'm going to click on this title. And what this result should do is take me, I'm crossing my fingers, to the full text of this article. And it looks like it does. So again, the important things you need to remember: the title up here, the author, Mark J. Souther. It's coming from the Journal of American History, volume 94, issue number 3, December 2007, pages 804 through 811. It looks like we have the HTML version here of the full text. We can also look at the full text PDF if I click here on the left-hand side, right? That way I can print this or just email this to myself. If I want to email it to myself, in the upper right, there is an email feature. If you click on that, we'll make sure that we email ourselves the full text of this article. It looks like it's only going to allow us with APA citation. So again, you're going to have to create that MLA citation. I'm going to show you how to do that. Put your Xavier email address in here, your name, and maybe a message just to remind you of why you're emailing this to yourself. There is also a cite feature aside from emailing it to yourself. So if you're just doing this while writing your paper and you want to cite this, this comes in handy. However, I do want you to be aware these are not always 100% correct. So you still need to be familiar with the rules of MLA. We can just scroll down to MLA. Looks like MLA 9th is the latest. It's going to generate that citation for you. Copy and paste this into your paper. But again, make sure that your indentation, your spacing, capitalization, italicized words, whatever it might be, are correct. You need to become familiar with what an MLA citation looks like. But this is a quick and easy way to add that citation and then make those corrections on there. Okay, I am going back to my results list. We kind of went through on how to make this database work for you, right? Use the left-hand side limiters to really narrow down. We started off super broad with French Quarter, almost 50,000 results. We ended up with 83 results. Not all 83 are particularly relevant, but we did find at least one that may work for us. And that's what it's going to take as you're narrowing this down. 83 results is a lot better than 50,000 results. So let the database do the work for you. I know there's some hesitation from faculty when students specifically and solely only research Google. But as a librarian and information professional, I think if you have the skills, the information literacy skills to identify credible, reliable information, Google is a great tool to use. And we'll talk about that as I'm doing some of these sample searches. So I'm probably going to pick the most familiar, at least from someone who's not from New Orleans, probably the most recognizable neighborhood. I'm going to do the French Quarter. Now, in this search box, I'm going to start with quotation marks as I'm doing this search. And if you're not familiar with why I'm using quotation marks, this is a helpful information literacy tip for you. Do this whenever you're using any search box, whether it's a library search box tool or you're coming to Google. You'll put quotation marks around 2 or more keywords that you are trying to search. And the reason you'll want to do that is because it will search for everything that is related to those two keywords and nothing else. Otherwise, if I leave this open, specifically in a library database search box, if I just put French Quarter with no quotation marks, that tool will search for every major keyword with the word French and every major keyword with the word quarter, and not necessarily together. I'm looking for results specifically on the French Quarter, not results for just French and not results for quarter. So helpful tip when doing that, because that will really focus and limit your results specifically to what it is that you're looking for. All right. So I'm just going to do this super broad. We've picked a neighborhood in New Orleans. I'm clicking on, or I'm typing in French Quarter, and I have some information here, right? One thing that you want to do, and I think this is a great starting point because we're just starting out our research, Google is a great starting point to look for. But one thing I want you to keep in mind are the domains of the results that are coming up. And what I mean by that is it's the ending of that URL. So this first result right here is neworleans.com, right? Here's another .com. .com is that domain. We want to be aware of the domains for whatever website we are looking at when we are using their information. Here's Wikipedia. It's a .org, meaning it's an organization, right? .com is a commercial site. Now, the other hesitation that I know some faculty have is students when they are using Wikipedia for their research. I, in particular, don't have any hesitation with that. I think Wikipedia is a great source. However, you need to find out where that information is coming from, and Wikipedia shows you that information with in-text citations. So let's take a look at this Wikipedia URL right here on the French Quarter, right? We've selected this neighborhood. This is a great introduction to the French Quarter. We have some history here on the right-hand side, kind of like at a glance. Obviously, it's saying what country, the state, the city. We have the size of that neighborhood and the population here as of 2010. Scrolling down again, you have your history. But as I was mentioning, in Wikipedia, you have these in-text citations. That's what you see by these numbers here that are listed at the end. Those are citations. Those are entries that have been put in either by bots, because there are bots that add to Wikipedia, or other researchers, students, whoever it might be adding to Wikipedia, right? This is an open online encyclopedia. Anyone can add anything to Wikipedia. So that's why you have to kind of be on your game when you are using Wikipedia and reading about certain entries that are there and see where that citation is coming from. So I'll show you how we can match these up. You may be familiar with what a citation is, these in-text citations, and looking at the end of the paper. But that's where you'll want to be aware of what you're reading here and who is citing this information to, I guess, to mainly see if it's accurate. So I'm going to scroll down again. Some background information, right, about French Quarters. This is all going to be super helpful as we're putting together our report. At the very end, for anything that maybe we want to reference or cite within our own research paper, we'll want to look to see where that's coming from. So all of those numbers that you saw for those in-text citations are listed here. And you can see where these citations are coming from. If anything looks kind of funny, or it may be a bogus site or some kind of site that doesn't necessarily maybe match up with, let's just say, common sense or with your personal knowledge of New Orleans, you may want to look at that a little bit closer and see what else you can find. And To be honest, Wikipedia should not be your only source of information for your report. However, this is a great starting point for your research, right? All right, so we have the French Quarter here. We have some great information. I think this is a great starting point to get some background information about the neighborhood that you are going to research. And you also have to look at maybe recent challenges faced by the residents of that neighborhood. So as you're reading through this, I would take a look at maybe some of the contents on here and see if there's anything that kind of sticks out. Maybe we need to take a look at the effects of Hurricane Katrina and on the residents there, or post Katrina, and what's happening since that hurricane, or subsequent hurricanes from there. Maybe we are going to look at disaster preparedness, things like that, emergency preparedness in this neighborhood. Again, because this is a well-recognized neighborhood within New Orleans, maybe we want to look at tourism, for example, right? So we have Bourbon Street, restaurants and hotels. Maybe we want to take a deeper look into that. Whatever it might be, I would look at major keywords within this entry of the French Quarter and take a look at the contents here to get some ideas of possible topics to address a recent challenge, which is required within the report that you're doing. Now, this one is great. As someone who is not familiar with Louisiana history and a lot of the historical aspects of the state, and in particular New Orleans, I found this particular site super helpful when getting some more recent information and background information about certain neighborhoods. So what I liked about this site is when I was searching this particular website, I noticed that there are reports here. So you can see there's a lot of reports related to the economy and workforce, population and demographics, right? You need some demographic information related to your neighborhood. There's data resources on here, which is great. We talked about Hurricane Katrina, Katrina related data, pre-Katrina data on here that may be helpful. You have some maps. And then, as I mentioned, it's important to recognize where you're getting this information from. So above all, who is the Data Research Center? And I can just tell you, without taking a lot of time going into that, is a credible, reliable source here. They have some information about who they are. So if you were to click on this, you can kind of see who this organization is. But let's get into looking at some information related to the French Quarter. So I am typing French Quarter. In the upper right-hand corner, you can see there's a search box right here. And there's a lot of results, but I did this for a few different neighborhoods, and we'll take a look at a few different neighborhoods in this particular website. But the one you're looking for is the one that just says French Quarter, right? That's what we typed in. We just want information on the French Quarter. So I'm clicking on that. And this was last updated August 24th, 2022, not that long ago. So super current. And I really like this as opposed to Wikipedia. And again, I think Wikipedia is a great source, but I have the tab still open, and I'm going to scroll right here and show you this information. At least for population, is coming from 2010, right? This website was last updated August 24th, 2022, and we have some population numbers here. Pretty close, pretty much the same thing, but I think this is a little bit more current. So when we're looking for demographic information, my suggestion is to check out this particular website, the datacenterresearch.org, and type in your particular neighborhood in here and see what information you can find. Without making you dizzy and scrolling around a lot, I'm just going to point out these different areas on here. So again, picking out a particular topic or recent challenge faced by residents of that particular neighborhood might be listed right here, right? Maybe you're interested in housing and housing costs related to your neighborhood, or income and poverty. So maybe homelessness. Maybe you're looking at transportation, education. Think about all of these different topics that you might want to consider as you're doing your report. I'm just going to click on this house or the housing and housing costs on here, just to kind of give you an idea of some of the data that they share on here. So occupied housing, vacant housing, and this tells you where this data is coming from on here. So, right, if you want to use some of this, you need to cite your information. I'm not going to go in depth on plagiarism. You may have heard about plagiarism. I hope you're familiar as a college student with what plagiarism is. No one wants to be accused of plagiarism, essentially using someone else's work without giving them credit and passing it off as your own, right? It's kind of a big academic no-no. You can get in some serious trouble with that. So again, remember, cite your sources, not only this website, but if you're using some of this data is coming from this citation source right here. I'm going to scroll a little bit further down. Maybe we're interested in employment in this neighborhood. So workers living in this neighborhood, it gives some background information, wages, for example, and then the industry sector that some of the residents in this neighborhood, where they may be employed on here. So super insightful. I'm going to show you one more example of another neighborhood, and I believe one of those neighborhoods is the Garden District. So I have it already listed on there. So maybe you chose the Garden District, right? Again, this is the entry you should be looking for, the one that's specific to your neighborhood. However, in the search results, again, I'd take a look at some of these other entries just to see if they have some additional information you might be interested in. We'll take a look at some of those in just a minute, but I'm going to click on the one that is specifically for the Garden District. And again, this was last updated August 24th, 2022. You have that same left-hand side, income and poverty, housing and housing costs, educational attainment, employment, all of this helpful demographic data here that you should be using for your report. Going back to these results, I'm going to click on this one, Spotlight on the Garden District, a neighborhood with a lot of history. So if we want to get some more background information about this particular neighborhood, I most likely will click on this. Now, this is coming from an article in, I believe, an online magazine. They might have a physical presence. I'm not familiar with this title, but the title is In Gambit from May 11th, 2021. Not super old, so there's still some currency there, meaning it's pretty up to date. Clicking on this is going to redirect me to this website, which is NOLA.com. Again, the publication is Gambit. And Spotlight on the Garden District, a neighborhood with a lot of history. Now, when you're doing these reports, you need to recognize, again, the type of source that you're using. This is a .com website, most likely a online magazine publication. They may have a physical publication. They may have a physical magazine. I'd have to maybe Google and search that. However, the difference between this commercial site and maybe a more academic site, like the data research center that we were just at, are these ads here that you'll see on the right-hand side, right? That doesn't mean that this information within this web page is not helpful. It just means that this is kind of for the casual everyday reader, but it has some helpful background information. So as you're compiling your sources, I would say a good mix of maybe some .com sites, some .edu, some .gov sites, some .organization sites would be best to add in your research paper. I wouldn't solely rely on magazines or .com websites, right? But a good mix of where you're getting your information will round out your paper very well. So again, neighborhood history, profiles and preservation of this neighborhood. Looks like it's listing some restaurants or points of interest within that particular neighborhood. Again, this is coming from that data center, so you can browse some of these results that you are getting right here.